the spot ETF. So this is coming out on the 8th. I think we will know, we'll know by the 9th. We'll know by tomorrow, by the time this comes out, what the outcome is on at least ARK's ETF, because I believe on the 8th they'll make a determination. Talk to us a little bit about kind of what's your insight into how this whole process works. So let's imagine they actually get approved, one, several, all of them. How do you actually envision that happening? And then what's it actually entail in terms of going live? Like, how long does that actually take, and that sort of process?
I'll probably start off the bat with a bold comment, which will render what I'm about to say completely useless, or put me in God status. Wow, what a savant for picking that. But we're due a response by, what is it, the 8th or 10th of January.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I feel like that is going to be a huge disappointment for the Bitcoin market, and we're not going to see that for many reasons. Firstly, I think, yeah, I know, right? Everyone's like,
Ooh, you
yay,
got
we're
me
going to
actually
get it.
upset, Pete. Shit. Okay, tell me.
Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen then. And
Okay.
if I look at that, I think, well, everyone's just basically got that baked in that it's a shoe-in, and everyone doesn't realize that they walk to the beat of their own drum. They're not beholden to anyone. And deadline schmedline in their world, they'll do whatever they feel like. And to think that they've got to do it because BlackRock's got they've had 546 out of 547 ETFs approved. Like, in short, who gives a shit? They're going to do it whenever they feel like it, is the first point. The second point is, if you look at the breakdown of the custodians of the ETFs, of the 20 ETFs that are in there, Coinbase represents 90% of the custodians. Well, 90% use case. So 18 of the 20 custodians in use are going to be with Coinbase. And then you're left with Fidelity and Galaxy, who are going to basically look after their own through a subsidiary or the rest of it. Now, what I think is sort of ironic, because it might have been lost in the wash because it's been quite an eventful year, is that everyone seems to forget that because we've had FTX blow up, we've had Sam Bankman-Fried go to jail, or soon to be, we've had Binance basically cleaned out, $4 billion fine paid there. We've had CZ probably going to jail for 18 months on the back of it, potentially. The thing that's no one's talking about is the fact that Coinbase still has an investigation for unregistered securities going on with the SEC. It's an ongoing investigation. And I'm like, how do you square that circle where you've got 90% of the 90% of the applications for this Bitcoin ETF are going to go to an institution that has an ongoing investigation from the SEC? Now, if I'm Gary Gensler and I just want to buy a little bit more time and basically give the shits to the crypto people or Bitcoin people just a little bit more, because there's probably no bigger antagonistic bunch than a Bitcoiner or the Bitcoiners. What a great excuse! Turn around and say, "Oh, well, look at this. 90% of you guys are custodied with Coinbase, and we've got an ongoing investigation. So until that's cleared up, we're not going to give approval." Now, that'd be perfectly legitimate excuse for him to turn around and say, yeah, we're not going to do it now. We might do it later when we've cleaned that up, but basically we're going to have a huge fine for Coinbase, and that'll probably be in the billions of dollars. Luckily, their share price is up 350% this year, so their balance sheet can probably afford $1 billion fine or more. And then once they've paid their fine, then they can get on with approving 90% of the ETF. So as unpopular as that opinion is, I think, I hate to deliver bad news here, but I wouldn't be surprised if that does not go down the way we think it does. And yeah, sadly, I think it will get done. It just might not get done by the 10th of January, which is what we're all expecting.
You know what's funny? I love the contrarian thinking. I'm so stoked you said that, because it's almost like what happens in these bull markets, and I've been talking to a lot of people about, is the critical thinking side of me starts slowly shutting down a little bit. It drinks the Kool-Aid way too much. And I love just hearing different perspectives, because it kind of just brings me down to earth. And when I'm talking to normies, I tend to talk about it'll be approved by the end of Q1, even though in amongst all the discussions I had with Bitcoiners, it's almost been a shoo-in. Yeah. The market is priced in like a 90 something probability that will actually go through. But I just love that thinking, Pete. It's true Bitcoiner form, man, because like we didn't chat about Javier Milei in the last episode, but everyone is like, Javier Milei, I'm so pumped. We've got a Bitcoiner in office, a libertarian, blah, 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 blah. And because I, come from South Africa, I've just got this inbuilt sort of suspicion of politicians. And I'm like, man, he's probably just the same as everyone else. And once he's there, he's going to be as compromised as everyone else. He can't get shit done. And he has to, they
Who
basically are,
deals?
yeah, they got to do deals. And, he might want to say, fuck the IMF, but he can't because he's beholden. And he's owned in many ways. And he'll have to do deals with them and say, okay, I need to push this issue. And okay, fine, I'll give you this. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Gary is having lots of chats in the back, and they don't give a shit. They couldn't give a shit. They make their own rules. Like I have no sympathy for crypto people because I think they're just absolute grifters or just delusional. But if I were to try and play devil's advocate, the SEC's approach of regulation by enforcement is just fucking deplorable. I mean, create a set of rules that are very clear, issue guidance notes around those things, and then move forward. Like, get that through Congress, do whatever you need to do. Like, you need to try and create like actual clarity instead of just tackling this random one, this random one, this random one. I'm trying to be nice here to the crypto people, but it's like, yeah, if you're a grifter, that's my argument,
You know what's funny here? They don't give a shit.
No,
and
no.
and they don't. They're just sitting on it. They're going to do whatever they feel like. And this is where what amuses me is, we think, oh well, under their guidelines, they say they've got to have an answer by the 10th of January or whatever the date is, drop dead date by whatever. And it's like they don't have to do anything. They're the ones holding the pen, so they make the rules. They're going to do whatever they feel like, whenever they feel like. And we just sound like, just yap 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 from the cheap seats. It's like, we don't understand. It's their world, not our world. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. It's on a side note, it reminds me of like they hold us in utter disdain. They couldn't give a shit about us. They couldn't give a shit about investor protection. It's really just all about politicking, careerists, progressing yourself. Gary's positioning himself to go and work at Treasury or at one of the banks. You can just smell it. He's just such a slimy little weasel. I actually like just can't look at him without like wanting to smack him upside the head. Because I just think to myself, like, it's amazing how much power these people have, and they know it and they love it. They absolutely love it. They just kind of they relish it and they go, I've got people talking all day, every day, and they think they'll make a difference. Well, I can hold this all up. I can make this easy. I can make it hard. It's all up to me. And it just reminds me of the way that airlines treat us and doctors, dare I say, you have to be there on time or just wait, and then you have to just wait. So like, anyway, rant over, Pete. I love it. I love that contrarian take. So, okay, now the timing of the ETF might be somewhat up for discussion. And it seems like we're on the same page then. It's not a question of if, but when.
Yeah.
And that's the real question. Now, something I've been chatting to people about is like, okay, so you've got these different ETFs. They're going to compete on fees. That can be one thing. They might have different, custody models. This one might, like you said, 90% of them using Coinbase. So that's already kind of, I don't know if they thought that'd make it easier to get approved or not, but so like we can differentiate ourselves on that score. But like, what are the other things they can do? My thought was, well, someone's going to want to put their hand up. Maybe, a smaller player, not necessarily one of the Black Rocks, but maybe like an ARK or, Franklin Templeton or someone down the track might say, you know what, we'd like to amend ours so that we can actually allow holders to redeem in kind. Do you think that's ever going to happen? Do you think anyone will ever want to do that? Or just it's always going to be kind of like a cash settled thing?
I thought I read something today that BlackRock had an amendment to put that in.
Did not see that.
No, so that
Oh.
could just be typical Twitter bullshit. But no, I thought I read somewhere that they were putting that amendment in to take payment in kind, which would allow you to avoid a CGT, capital gains tax event, on withdrawal of that, and allow you to take the actual underlying rather than having to sell it, pay the tax, then get your cash and then repurchase. So I think those sort of innovations are going to be spurred on, probably led by market leaders like BlackRock. And here's something really funny, like from our conversation last time around on-ramp. that's what on-ramp does now, allows you to take payment in kind, which I think is a huge innovation in the space. So they'll probably restrict that to large institutions or corporate clients to allow them to take it in kind. I don't think they'll allow that for retail. It'll be a threshold that, unless you're over maybe 10, 20 or 30 Bitcoin, they won't let you do it.
Okay, so I'm just out of the range there. No, I'm joking. No, so it's almost like gold. I know that some of these gold ETFs, like you need to have a lot in order for you to be able to actually go and redeem it. Otherwise, for the average pleb, he can't get hold of GLD or whatever it might be and say, "Hey, can I just get my 1 ounce coin?"
Exactly right. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the ETFs, and just mechanically, like how did they actually work? And this is as much for me as the audience, because I'm just thinking, okay, so you're approved. Have you got any Bitcoin yet that in a separate entity that you can just drag across that you've been buying quietly so that you've got more Bitcoin? Or do you suddenly now start going to market? Do you go to OTC desks? Like, what do you actually do? Let's imagine you get approved now. How does it actually function?
well, it depends what institution you're talking about. So if you look at BlackRock, BlackRock's got multiple alternative asset funds. So those alternative asset funds would be allowed to, I would have thought, or have the mandate to purchase Bitcoin now. So they might be getting a head start on it, potentially, just to watch this run up. Other institutions like Van Eck and Fidelity might not have, the access to do that. Interestingly, and this is probably something that I think is counter to what a lot of people are talking about at the moment, they're like, because of the success of the ETFs sort of needing a level playing field, so they're all going to get approved on the day. I just don't see that happening. Like, I look at this and just think this is going to create absolute bedlam in the Bitcoin market if they approve 20 ETFs on the same day, because all of these ETFs are spot settled. So they've got to go out and they've got to find Bitcoin, like real Bitcoin. And imagine 20 funds going out there and doing that. And so these 20 institutions control $50 trillion of capital. They'll have already had their marketing teams and sales teams geared up to try and get commitments for their fund. They're all ready to go. If they approve all of them on the same day, there's going to be this influx of capital, probably somewhere to the tune of 10 to $20 billion would be the first day initial input is what I think would happen. And you're going to have 10 to $20 billion worth of capital come into the market to buy Bitcoin all at the one time. All of a sudden, this is the God candle that Max Kaiser and Samson Mao talk about, that if we have that much capital enter the market, they've got to buy Bitcoin at spot on the day. And they're not going to have months and months and months or weeks and months and even years to accumulate Bitcoin like Michael Saylor did. When he first started buying Bitcoin, he was buying $2,000, $3,000 lots every second for weeks on end. And he still only got to $4 billion of purchases over the last 3 years. Now, what happens when $20 billion worth of capital has to buy it in that 24-hour period? All of a sudden, it is going to do crazy things to the price. And the real problem is that the next day, they're going to have another inflow of capital. Now, it might not be 20 billion on the day, it might be 1 to 2 billion or whatever it is. But then that next day, you've still got to buy more Bitcoin. And then the day after that, you've got to buy more Bitcoin again. So all of a sudden, this is a real forcing function to get Bitcoin off exchange, because it's going to be purchased by this weight of capital coming into it. So I think they're not going to approve 20 ETFs on the spot, because they don't want $20 billion worth of capital turning up on the same day to buy Bitcoin. And probably something, and I'm trying to remember who told me this, because I think this is actually going to be one of the biggest issues of this cycle in the next 2 years moving forward, is in this cycle, we don't have a Genesis trading desk to fulfill any size order that you want. In years gone past, Genesis was the be all and end all. If you talk to Michael about Genesis, they were always there. They were ultra reliable. They were the only trading desk in the whole ecosystem that you never had to worry about.
In terms of volume, like if you went to them and said,
in terms of volume, in terms of settling, in terms of having the cash available, every other trading desk you looked at and went, are they good for it? Are they not good for it? We're not sure. But whatever Genesis said basically went. So, when you look at that amount of capital coming in that shorter period of time, and there's no longer basically the trusted trading desk, and it's got to be distributed across everyone, it's going to cause absolute like chaos in the market.
Okay, so on that basis, you reckon they'll stagger it,
Yeah.
and then you think, okay, I suppose on the one hand you've got the rules, so what the SEC is supposed to do, and then you've got the meta rules, or I don't know what the term would be, the real politic of it all. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a better word, but you know what I mean. Like BlackRock would be the one first in line because old Larry owns a lot of people in positions of power. So is that kind of the two things that you're thinking? Okay, so it won't be necessarily all approved in one day. They will pick kind of, dare I say, winners and losers, and yeah, do you think there'll be that case, and then it'll be a case of, do we pick people who got your first? Like I think Kathy Wood is supposed to be first if you're going to play by the rules.
Uh,
You think it'll happen?
I love Kathy Wood. I love her. I think she's fabulous. And up until recently, I got to catch up with Kathy quite often. So I've got a huge amount of respect for her work and what she does. And she's been first to Bitcoin from any major fund manager, and she's
Yeah.
way ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work like that. I think they're going to play favourites. And although she may be entitled to be first cab off the rank, I don't think that's how it's going to play. I think there's going to be a couple of things that sort of play out this cycle that, might take a little bit to get done, but I think the ETF approval is going to be delayed. I think, we talked about the fact that, there's that unregistered security problem with Coinbase as a custodian.
And Kraken actually as well. They've got their problem too, eh?
Yeah, they do. And the other unresolved issue that's sort of hanging over the industry at the moment, which is another reason for them to just kibosh any approval on this at the moment, which I forgot to mention. And I don't like talking about it because I've got a huge amount of respect for Barry and he's been very good to our family, is that, Grayscale Trust, that's in line for a rollover to an ETF, and they're taking, the SEC to court on not approving it. And, if some of the allegations are true about what happened and conspired, or transpired, I should say, within Grayscale over the last 2 years with Terra Luna and all of the trading that went on, there's a very real likelihood that Barry may be forced to, abscond his position as owner of that fund and have to sell it to market.
Mm.
And then, that's another thing that might need clearing up before they give approval. They don't want a 650,000 coin fund sitting out there that's got all of these potential issues with it that could blow up or have any sort of claim over it. So, they might want to say, we want to see that entity closed down and you can no longer run that. In which case that'd be really fortunate for BlackRock. They just get to pick it up.